Thank you, Tim and Abby and the BVCA for inviting me here to speak. Before I became CEO of Profile Pensions, I actually spent 11 years working in venture capital, and then 2 years ago made the leap and joined a startup. That startup, Profile Pensions, is what I'm going to talk to you about today, and particularly the problem that we're solving and why we think this problem is really important. I'd like to start, there we go, by asking you just to take a moment and just imagine your own retirement. Try and create a picture in your mind, if you can. Maybe you love work so much that retirement in a conventional way isn't really something you're going to do. Maybe it's about taking more control of your time. Maybe you plan on retiring and traveling a lot, learning a new skill. And if you think about retirement, hopefully some sort of happy, kind of cliched image, a bit like this one, comes to mind. If you travel around the UK and talk to normal people in the UK and typical people who are saving and thinking about retirement and ask them to describe the thoughts they have when they think about it, you get a picture that looks more like this. And specifically these people in the background. They're people in their 40s, 50s, maybe early 60s, maybe late 30s. They've got grown-up children who are still in some way dependent on them. They've got their own parents who are aging and starting to have to need care and put sort of pressure on them that way. And when they think about their own retirement, they don't think optimistic things at all. It's a source of stress and anxiousness, and they try really not to think about their own retirement at all. When you get them to do it, it's a source of worry. And they're right to be worried, because typical retirement outcomes in the UK are pretty bad. There was a story this morning on the BBC News, I don't know if you saw it, that 23 million people are going to have to work long into retirement now, well into their 70s, because they can't afford to retire earlier. Joseph Rowntree Foundation says nearly 40 million people won't reach the target replacement rate of income. 30% of people actually don't have any private personal pension income at all. Those that do, the median is only £146. And the people who don't have pension income also don't have property income. So property is not the solution to this. In fact, more and more people are becoming private renters into retirement, and more mortgages are lasting into retirement. Also, people are living longer, which is great, but puts more pressure on pension resources people have saved. So the situation is bad, and the situation is getting worse for most people. Profile exists because we think the root cause of this is engagement with pensions, that if people can become more engaged, more informed, they can start to take steps to really improve their retirement outcomes over and above just investing more. 77% of people today don't know, haven't thought about how much money they need to retire. If you haven't thought about that, how do you even start retirement planning? 1 in 5 people, about 7 million people, believe it or not, don't know where their pensions are. Only about half the people in the UK actually get pension statements. About another 35% don't get statements, but sort of know where their pension is. About 15% of people don't know where their pension is at all. And this is Aegon data, but it actually ties with our experience as well. About 1 in 5 people we help, we find a pension they didn't know they had, believe it or not. The level of engagement with pensions, typical people outside of this kind of audience, this financially sophisticated audience, is very, very low. And of course, with auto-enrollment, there are more and more smaller pension pots, more fragmentation, more complexity in staying on top of that. And even people who do know where their pensions are, they don't really know anything about them. They don't know the performance, they don't know the fees they're paying, they don't know if it's sufficient for them in retirement, got no real way of benchmarking. Is this good? Is it right for me? Is it suitable? And actually, interestingly, women even less engaged than men. And this low engagement, this passiveness, causes bad outcomes for people in retirement, much worse outcomes than they need to have, even taking away the effects of just saving more. So on a like-for-like basis, a comparable mix of assets, people who haven't moved their pension in 10 or 15 years are paying 3 times as much in platform and fund fees, 3 times as much. Imagine if one electricity supplier was charging 3 times another one. It'd be an outcry. But in pensions, because the costs and the fees are also hidden and so complex, people don't see this. People are paying 3 times as much to be invested in bad funds, funds that have active management strategies that are not appropriate, with profits funds that don't pay profits, funds with hidden transaction costs and lots of churn, all these kind of things. That's just at the pre-retirement phase. As people get closer to at retirement, pension freedoms here has changed the market in a big way. People just don't know what to do. So increasingly, people are accessing their pension pots early, often in full. This is FCA data. 1 million people before the age of 65 have accessed their pension pots into pension freedoms. Over half of them have taken their pensions out fully. You look at what those people are doing, they're putting it in ISAs, they're putting it in cash, because they just don't know what's the right thing to do, and they don't really trust the government not to move the rules around again. And people who don't do that, they just default into their existing provider's drawdown product, which tends to be pretty expensive. So why is that? Why are people so poorly engaged with something that's so fundamentally important to their quality of life when they get to retirement? And traditional financial advisors, face-to-face financial advisors, are not the solution to this problem. Traditional financial advisors have a pretty clear sort of picture in their mind of what their ideal customer looks like. And it's something like this. It's not a 50-year-old with £37,000 in pension assets, which is the kind of typical profile of someone in the UK. Traditional IFAs, high-cost, face-to-face IFAs, are interested in customers with lots of assets, the mass affluent and upwards. Before the retail distribution review, financial advisors were interested in the mass market because they got paid fat commissions that they didn't have to disclose to sell products that they were incentivized to sell. But that's all gone now. And so this mass market, the tens of millions of people in the mass market, are just ignored by traditional financial advisors who can't afford to serve them. And then just try doing it yourself. It's incredibly complicated. Even if you have a pension statement, so you'd start on the third box of this, and that's only about half the country. How do you make sense of it? Is it a good fund, a bad fund? What are the fees? How does it compare? Is it appropriate for me, given my stage of life? A lot of people don't have that. If you don't know where your pension is at all, it's really quite difficult to track it down. You can write to HMRC to request your tax record. You can try and do it that way. If you've got a vague idea, you can use the DWP's website to try and find the contact details of your fund administrators and write to them. Whole process end to end takes about 5 months. People just don't do it. It's just too complicated. So that's the problem we're solving, making it very easy and hassle-free and risk-free for anyone, no matter how large their pension pot is, to make the right decisions and to get engaged with their pension. And to do that, we have to do something really useful for people for free and only start to charge when we demonstrably add value, demonstrably improve people's retirement outcomes. So we have a lot of technology that helps us track down people's pension, extract the information, make sense of it, explain it to people at very, very low marginal cost. So we can do that for free for anyone who wants us to. And it really works. We've done this for about 50,000 people now. 1 in 5 cases we found pensions they didn't know they had. 17,000 of those 50,000 are actually now our ongoing paying customers. Those people have pensions invested in the best kind of tracker funds in the market, much lower fees, assets appropriately matched to their risk. And a big part of our job is actually explaining how much risk people should take. It's okay to take some equity risk when you're 10 or 20 years, 30 years from retirement, less so as you get closer to retirement. And the ultimate measure for us really is what do our customers say about us and how do they feel about what we're doing. We use Trustpilot a lot, which is very visible and externally, but actually we use an independent service to measure Net Promoter Score. And I was asked also to share a lesson that we've learned along the way, so it's going to be around customer service and customer feedback. Every single time we have an interaction with a customer, we send them an independent company on our behalf, sends them a very short Net Promoter Score question and a little comment box. So we can independently measure our Net Promoter Score, which is 76, it's about 77 now, actually. And we care about that number a lot, and we benchmark that against financial services companies, but just other consumer companies around the world, and perform very well. We also take that data and make it part of our day-to-day management of the business. So I think a lot of businesses talk about being customer-centric and listening to customers. But what does that mean for you? How do you embed that in your operation? And for us, it's taking that hose of data that we get from all our customer surveys, putting it in a Slack channel and making it visible to everyone in the business to see, including the detail. So I've blocked out the customer surnames in here just for data protection, but you can see the people in our company who do it. All of this comes through, dozens and dozens and dozens of these every day, visible to everyone. So everybody in the organization firstly gets immediate feedback when they've done something well. They can see that and can see what's important to customers. And my closing thought on this, what we've learned from all of this feedback is what's important to customers is the human interaction that we have with them. So technology in our business It's about enabling those human interactions to encourage people to do something about their pensions. And it's that combination of technology and a great human experience that we think solves the problem of pensions. Thank you.